let's talk about more thrillers. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now today I am going to be talking about all the other thrillers that I have read. So if you guys haven't checked it out already, I did a video recently where I did like romance reader tries thrillers, and the outcome of that video was basically me falling in love with thrillers and me liking them so much to the point that I just kept reading more and more. I just wanted to catch up on like the biggest thrillers out there, and they were available through my library, so I said why the heck not, and I decided to read like I think about 10. So I'm in the middle of actually reading one right now, but because of the time limits of this video and I didn't want to wait for me to finish that book before I started this video, I'm just going to talk a little bit about it after I review my 10 books that I read. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So the first book that I want to talk about is actually Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier. And now this book I actually really enjoyed. And now this book is actually about a perfect couple, basically. One is a hair salon stylist that makes a lot of money, and then the other one is like kind of like rags to riches businessman who started off really poor and didn't have a lot of money, so that he had all the motivation in the world to keep making money so that he can live the lifestyle he wanted and deserved. So they have a picture perfect family until one day during Christmas, during the holidays, right before Christmas, and they go to a market that they usually go to, and it's crowded and there's a lot of people everywhere, you know, pushing and shoving, and then suddenly the wife loses the child, and that's kind of like the start of the end of their relationship. So this whole entire book follows like the journey of like how their relationship crumbles and falls apart, and also the wife digging a lot deeper into the husband's lives and realizing all these secrets that he's been hiding from her. And it was a great thrilling tale that I was very captivated with. I thought this book would go into a direction of focusing more on the child being missing and how they were using all their resources to go find the child, but this book actually went into a different direction that I'm not going to complain about, because I thought that direction was pretty good too. So the direction that they did focus more on was like the domestic aspects of it, of how these characters were turning into people that they don't even know anymore, and how they were becoming like iffy characters that you don't even trust and you don't even believe. I thought the atmosphere was really good and really tense, and I gave this book actually a 4 out of 5 stars. The reason why I didn't give it a 5 out of 5 was because the ending was good, but it just wasn't what I wanted in a thriller, so then that's why I had to take a star off. So the next book that I read was The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, and now this book, I was recommended this book from Gabby Reads and here on YouTube, and she rated it really high. Like, she praised it. I think she ranked it in her thrillers video where she ranked it as like God tier. And I was super excited to see that it was available through my library. And when I borrowed the audiobook, when it first started, I thought it was really good. And I really like the atmosphere building. I really like the world building as well. This book follows a couple who is married and they're gay. They actually have a daughter that's adopted. And so there's a lot of diversity in this thriller novel, as we can tell already. And basically, the little girl makes friends with someone in the field, and that person turns out to be a very creepy person, and that are waiting to cause harm to this family. And basically they're trapped in a cabin, this remote cabin where nobody's getting signal and nobody's like getting help they need because everybody's really far away from each other. And this group of people come with like these homemade weapons, and basically they tell them that the world is ending and that they need to come into the cabin or else the whole world will end. And then you're just kind of like reading this book and you're just kind of like trying to figure out if the world is actually ending or if it's these crazy people who are making up these lies and stories just to hurt these people inside the cabin. And I thought that the whole build up and the whole atmosphere and the whole world building was very good and very creepy, especially because if you think about it, like, you know, going into a cabin that's really far away from everybody and from civilization, not getting signal, not getting the help you need, like that's all really thrilling factors. Overall, I gave this book a 2 out of 5 stars because I just thought that the story was just dragging a lot. And if you read a lot of the reviews, you kind of already realize that, you know, the characters are underdeveloped and this plot is going nowhere. And it's just like, while it's only like 270 pages, it just still feels like it's dragging too long. And then the ending was just not satisfying at all, so that's why I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. So the next thriller that I read was An Unwanted Guest by Sherry Lapina, and now Sherry Lapina wrote one of my other favorite thrillers that I read for my last video called Couple Next Door, and I really liked that book, so I really wanted to try out more Sherry Lapina's books. So An Unwanted Guest is kind of like similar to A Cabin at the End of the World, where they are in a very secluded area and they have like no access to civilization. Like, you know, they don't get Wi-Fi, they don't get signal, and the police takes like weeks to come. So like what happens when you put like a group of characters together in this like very run down hotel like business where it's snowing outside heavily and the police doesn't come, and there are sudden murders happening in the hotel, and like people are freaking out and trying to basically figure out like this mystery and figure out who's actually doing all the killings. So this book is basically about that, and you're learning about different character perspectives and their motivations, and you're just kind of sitting there just kind of waiting for someone to get killed off or someone to figure out who's killing the people. And at first people think it's like a mistake and people think that it's an accident, but then soon more and more people are getting killed off. I thought the build-up was really good, and I thought the characters and their own motivations were unique and interesting because you can clearly tell like the differences between the characters and like their stories, and it was all like very messed up at some points. But the problem is that I gave this one a 2 out of 5 stars simply because like the twist in the ending was just very bland and very boring. I expected more from it. I expected a more complicated motivation towards like why that person would do all these actions. So I was kind of disappointed. So the next book that I read is a YA thriller, and it's called Jane Anonymous by Laurie Farrah Stallers. And now Laurie Farrah Stallers wrote a lot of books back in the days that I used to binge YA, and her books were so good. It was like Dirty Little Secrets and like I don't even know, like Dirty Little Lies, or like it's just like that like series, and I'll put like a picture of the series here so you guys can know what I'm talking about. But that series messed me up because of how dark and creepy it was, and I never knew YA could be so dark and creepy. So when I saw that Jane Anonymous was made available in the library, I definitely checked it out, and I had a grand time listening to this audiobook. So this book follows the story of a girl who is basically in the prime of her teenage years. She's in high school, she has friends, she's like happy, she's doing well, she goes for a jog, and then suddenly she's kidnapped and she's being held captive for 7 months by a crazy psychopath. And it goes between past and present, so you guys can see like how she was living and how she was dealing with the crazy psychopath, and then to her basically being freed and like learning how to relive her life and to refit herself back into society. And it's a really great story because like you're really creeped out in the past, but then you're very sad about the present, and I really liked it. And the twist I did not see coming. I really enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend this book. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I want to talk about is A Noise Downstairs by Linwood Barclay. And now this book follows the character who basically stumbles upon something that he should have never stumbled upon. He was driving down the street one night and it was very dark, but then he spots his friend's car on the side of the road, and he realizes that his friend is actually burying 2 dead bodies, and the friend hits him in the head with a shovel, and that's like where the story begins. Basically, he walked in on his friend burying his evidence of killing 2 girls, and now he has to live with like the injury to his head and also live with like the PTSD that happens when you've been attacked and when you've stumbled upon a very gruesome crime. And his friend actually was like known to be like a serial killer that makes his victims type on a typewriter and basically writes like letters of apologies to the guy before he kills them off. So what happens when our main character recovers and goes back into society and then suddenly hears the typewriter typing downstairs, and then he sees that there's like notes being typed up, and he thinks he's going to become a psychopath. So this book follows like a unreliable narrator because you're not sure if he's just thinking of it in his head because he's been hit in the head, or if he's actually just like literally dealing with like actual things happening in his house. And this book was set up really well. It was very creepy at times, it was very thrilling at times, but again, the ending wasn't very satisfying, although it was good and it was like twisted and I never saw it coming. It just wasn't the ending that I wanted, but I still gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I read was The Familiar Dark by Amy Engel. And now this book follows the story of a very poor family. Like, I would have to say that they are living in poverty. They don't have a lot of money, and they all depend on our main female character, who basically works at a diner on minimum wage. And, you know, they're not doing that great. She doesn't have a good relationship with her parents and with her mother, who is abusive and who's also an alcoholic. So what happens when she's working in the diner and then the police come in and tell her that her daughter has actually been murdered in the playground? And this is a story of basically the mother going on this like grand adventure of trying to figure out like all the lies and secrets and trying to figure out who actually killed her daughter. And I listened to this through an audiobook, and I thought the narrator was okay at times, but at the same time I felt like that our main female character just held no emotion, and she was just going through like so much trauma that she sounded very monotone at best, and her character was very bland when it was presented like that. And I just lost connection with our character, and I just felt pity towards their characters because they were stuck in a very gruesome situation where they don't have the resources to solve the problems that they face, but also at the same time they're just stuck in a situation where they can't really do much. And I gave this one 2 out of 5 stars because honestly I was just kind of bored with it. So the next book that I want to talk about is A Stranger in the House by Sherry Lapina. So this is my 3rd book by Sherry Lapina. So this book tells a story about a girl who recently got into an accident where she basically can't remember anything in her past. She can only remember bits and pieces. She knows who her husband is. She knows like stuff, but she can't remember that specific day of the incident. And everybody's questioning her and everybody thinks that she's lying, but she literally can't remember it. So you're dealing with an unreliable narrator once again. And she comes home and she realizes that somebody has been in her home because she's very OCD with a lot of things. So she knows exactly where she puts the things, and she knows that she puts the things back after taking them out, and she is like 100% sure of it. Everybody thinks that she's just doing it herself and that she's crazy and she just forgot. And so this is a story of basically us figuring out like who's in the house and who's causing all these problems. And obviously it also talks about a lot of domestic issues because this book is actually a domestic thriller. I thought that this book had a great build-up. I thought it was entertaining in the very beginning because I was like, holy shit, like if somebody came into my house and touched all these things, I wouldn't even know. Mostly because my house is like very messy and I'm a very messy person, but also at the same time, very creepy that somebody's just coming into your house, touching all these things, pretending to be you, and like to do all this without your consent and without your knowledge, because obviously a house is very personal. But the problem is that I was bored and I didn't care. So I gave this one 2 out of 5 stars. So the last book that I want to talk about is actually a book that I'm currently reading called A Good Marriage by Kimberly McGrath. So this book follows the story of like many different perspectives of like past and present as well. So this book follows the story of our main female character, who is a defense lawyer, and she is called upon by her good like law school friend who found himself in a predicament of being accused of murdering his wife. And she's like, I don't want any part of this. She feels sympathetic and she feels really bad for her friend. So she decides to go ahead with the investigation and to defend him. And through that, she also does a lot of digging through his past life and also his wife's past life. And then we have our wife's perspective of like how she got herself into the position that she found herself before she died, of how she grew up in a very poor home and she didn't go to college. So she feels inferior to her very successful husband and her very successful husband's friends. And it's like a very interesting dynamic. I think the story is very entertaining so far. I have around 2 hours left of the book, but I'm still like not like on the edge of my seat. I don't find that there's anything like going on like at the moment, and I've read reviews where they said that this book was a very slow burn thriller, so I'm excited for something to happen very soon. But anyways, that is it for all the thrillers that I have read recently and that I wanted to talk about. I definitely like thrillers, but at the same time I think I'm in a weird reading mood where I don't want to read too much of like the heavy stuff, but only the heavy stuff keeps my attention. So I'm looking forward to going back into romance and looking forward to reading more romance in the future. So do not worry, guys. I'm still a romance reader. But anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and hopefully you guys have a lot of recs. But until next time, I'll see you guys again. Bye.